Some time ago, I was speaking with a number of parents about why they joined local Pathfinder clubs. One mother in particular was very clear with me. She had a number of reasons why they chose to join a club that actually wasn't in their local church. And so I asked her to explain it to me, and there was one specific situation that really stuck out to me. She said that when she visited with the directors of her local club, they handed her a 19-page document filled with the rules and regulations of their club. 19 pages of rules. She said when she visited some of the other clubs, they had different ways of keeping track of those kind of things. But in one club, the club she chose to join, they had only 5 rules. What was really impressive is that she knew what the 5 rules were. Number 1 rule was very straightforward. Keep the Pathfinder pledge and law. Well, that makes sense for a Pathfinder club. There's a lot of things contained in there, but that was their first rule. Their second rule was to always tell the truth. You see, when somebody is always truthful with you, you know you can count on what they're saying. Once they start lying to you, now you question everything they say and do. Number 3 rule was to consider your neighbor. How do things relate to the people around you? I think of how many camporees I've been to where a club allows their kids to stay up super late and keep all their neighboring clubs awake. Or one who gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning and yells and screams at their Pathfinders to go and get a shower, waking up everybody around them. Consider your neighbor is a critical one. Number 4 rule was to make arrangements ahead of time. Don't go and do something and then come and ask for forgiveness or to apologize. But actually think about what you're doing ahead of time and make proper arrangements. Get permission ahead of time. And the last one, number 5, was kind of a catch-all. Be where you're supposed to be and do what you're supposed to do. Makes perfect sense. Recently, I've been reading about the history of Jesus dealing with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and I noticed a footnote that really intrigued me. We're used to understanding the 10 Commandments as given by God on Sinai, but there's a lot of other regulations outlined in the Torah, and the rabbis had put together a list. They said there were 613 rules that people needed to keep, but they began to expand on those into a longer oral tradition. Well, not long before Christ came the first time, there was the Maccabean Revolution or revolt in Palestine. And many of the priests were actually killed as leaders of this revolution. And so they decided they better start writing down this oral tradition so that they could remember it. And so those laws filled 63 books. The one book in particular that I caught note of was a book on how to keep the Sabbath. Now, I don't know what it was involved in the thickness of the book or how many verses, but there were 24 chapters in the book on how to keep the Sabbath. Yet when Jesus came, he took those 10 commandments and he told the disciples, indeed, I give you 2 commandments. He went the opposite direction with it. He said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. That really is the first 4 commandments as we recognize them. The second covered the 6th. And this is the second commandment. Like the first, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You can find that in Mark chapter 12. So I would like you to consider in leading your own club. Do you have lists and lists and lists of rules that no child or staff can remember, that they have to constantly refer to a manual of law? Or do you have a simple guideline of principles, things that they need to be considerate of for their neighbors, for their own well-being, for their own self-discipline? Look at your own club. See what you're doing and what kind of an impact it has, not just on the parents, but on each member. What are you teaching them about God?